I'm Sam Rodriguez, and 6 weeks ago I was nobody special. Just another 26-year-old guitar instructor grinding through life in a cramped studio apartment, teaching kids how to play power chords while barely scraping together rent money. My days blended into each other. Early morning lessons with teenagers who'd rather scroll through their phones, afternoon sessions with middle-aged students chasing dreams they'd postponed for decades, and late nights practicing alone until my neighbors pounded on the walls. I wasn't rich. I wasn't successful by anyone's standards. But I was content, or so I told myself. Then one phone call at midnight shattered everything. I thought I knew about my life, my family, and myself. My grandfather, James Rodriguez, a name whispered in boardrooms and featured in Forbes magazines. A man the world knew as a self-made billionaire who'd built an empire from nothing, but I knew simply as the only person who ever truly saw me. Died in a collision with a drunk driver on a Tuesday night. The news hit me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The man who taught me everything that mattered, everything my parents never cared to teach, was gone, just gone. One moment he was calling me to ask if I'd eaten dinner. The next moment a state trooper was telling me his car had been struck head-on and he didn't survive. The funeral was a circus of fake tears and calculated grief. My parents, Richard and Elena Rodriguez, paraded around like they'd lost a saint, but I saw through them. I always had. My father stood rigid in his $1,000 suit, eyes darting around, already calculating. My mother clutched her designer handbag like a lifeline, whispering loudly about how embarrassing it was that a billionaire drove himself around like a regular person. My brother Marcus leaned against a marble column, scrolling through his phone, sighing every few minutes like the whole thing was just an inconvenience, keeping him from his startup pitch meetings. Nobody actually mourned him. Not really. They mourned the bank account. They mourned the stocks. They mourned the assets they assumed would soon be theirs. Was the only one who stood by his casket and actually felt the loss. The only one who remembered Sunday afternoons in his study, where he'd pull out his old acoustic guitar and teach me songs from his youth. The only one who remembered walking through his rose garden, while he explained that wealth without character is just decorated emptiness. The only one who remembered him as a human being, not a walking ATM machine. 2 weeks after we buried him, I got a call from Gregory Matthews, his attorney. His voice was professional, but carried an undertone I couldn't quite place. Sam, your grandfather's will is ready to be read. He specifically requested your presence along with your immediate family. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. Don't be late. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. I had no idea that within 24 hours, everything I thought I understood about family, loyalty, and survival would be turned completely upside down. The next morning, I stood outside Gregory Matthews' office in downtown Chicago. The building was one of those old historic structures, all dark wood and brass fixtures, the kind of place that smelled like leather-bound books and old money. My hands were shaking as I pushed through the heavy oak door. Inside, the receptionist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, smiled sadly at me. Mr. Rodriguez is expecting you. Conference room B, down the hall. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The conference room was enormous, dominated by a massive mahogany table that could seat 20 people. I took a seat near the middle, my chair feeling too big, too formal. Before I could settle my nerves, the door burst open and my family stormed in like they owned the place. My father, Richard, strode in first, adjusting his Rolex with a sharp snap, his jaw set in that familiar expression of entitlement. My mother, Elena, clicked in behind him on heels that could have doubled as weapons, her face a mask of poorly concealed anticipation. And Marcus, my younger brother by 2 years, slouched in wearing expensive sneakers and a smirk that made me want to punch him. Let's make this quick, my father announced to no one in particular. We all know how this goes. Dad built his empire, and as his only son, I'll be managing the transition. We just need the formalities out of the way. Gregory Matthews entered then, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, carrying a leather portfolio that seemed to weigh more than it should. He didn't smile. He didn't offer pleasantries. He simply gestured for everyone to sit and opened the folder with deliberate care. James Rodriguez was of completely sound mind when he updated his will 8 months ago. Gregory began, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. He underwent full cognitive evaluations. 3 separate doctors confirmed his mental capacity. I was present for every signature. There is absolutely No question of his competence or his intentions. My father waved an impatient hand. Yes, yes, we understand. Let's get to it. Gregory's eyes met mine for just a second, and I saw something there. Warning, maybe, or sympathy. Then he cleared his throat and began reading. I, James Rodriguez, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this my final will and testament. To my beloved grandson, Sam Rodriguez, I leave the entirety of my estate, including all financial assets, real estate holdings, business interests, and investments, currently valued at approximately $7.3 billion. The silence that followed was so absolute I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. 7.3 billion. To me, the words didn't make sense. They couldn't be real. I must have misheard, but then the room exploded into chaos. And I knew I'd heard exactly right. What? My father shot up so violently. His chair toppled backward and crashed against the wall. His face went from pale to crimson in seconds, veins bulging in his neck and forehead. That's impossible. That's insane. He would never, ever bypass me like this. I'm his son. I'm his heir. My mother's perfectly... Manicured hand flew to her chest as if she was having a heart attack. $7 billion to a boy who teaches guitar for $15 an hour? He doesn't know the first thing about managing money. He'll lose it all in a year. Marcus ripped off his designer sunglasses and slammed both palms on the table so hard the sound echoed. Where's my cut? Grandpa promised me capital for my tech platform. He promised. This is theft. Gregory held up one hand, his voice remaining perfectly calm despite the hurricane of rage swirling around him. Mr. Rodriguez anticipated this exact reaction. He made it explicitly clear in multiple written and recorded statements that his decision was intentional, considered, and final. He stated, and I quote, "My son and daughter-in-law have been provided for generously throughout my lifetime. They have squandered every opportunity and lesson I tried to teach them. My grandson Sam is different. He visits because he cares, not because he wants. He lives with integrity. He will carry forward my life's work with the dignity it deserves." My father's face twisted into something ugly, something I'd never quite seen before, pure unfiltered hatred. He turned that look on me and I felt ice flood through my veins. "You," he hissed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You manipulated him. You poisoned his mind against his own family. You whispered lies while he was old and confused and vulnerable." "I didn't," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "I didn't even know he was rewriting his will. I never asked him for anything. Not once." Gregory reached for a remote control and pressed a button. A large screen mounted on the wall flickered to life, and suddenly there he was. My grandfather, sitting in his favorite leather chair in his study, the one I'd sat across from hundreds of times, his hands folded calmly in his lap, his expression serious but peaceful. My chest constricted so painfully I thought, I might pass out. "If you're watching this," my grandfather's voice filled the room, strong and clear, "it means I've passed on. Richard, Elena, Marcus, I love you as family, but I cannot ignore what you've become. Greed has consumed you. You see me as a means to an end, not as a father or grandfather. Every visit, every phone call, every holiday was about money, about access, about what you could extract from me. I gave you opportunities. I gave you chances to build your own character, your own legacy. You squandered every single one." His eyes seemed to look directly at me, through the screen. "Sam is different. Sam visits because he cares about me as a person. He asks about my life, my stories, my regrets. He brings his guitar and plays for me not to impress me, but to share something he loves. He's never once asked me for money. Not when his car broke down. Not when he couldn't make rent. Not when he was eating ramen for dinner 3 nights a week. He has integrity. He has character. And that is why I'm trusting him with everything I built." My mother let out a strangled sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Marcus cursed under his breath, his face twisted in disbelief and fury. My father stood frozen, trembling like he might explode. Gregory clicked off the screen and the silence returned, heavier than before. "The will is legally binding," Gregory continued, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It's been filed with the court. It's backed by mountains of documentation, medical records, psychiatric evaluations, multiple witnesses. Contesting it would be expensive, time-consuming, and frankly, futile. You would lose." My father's fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. "This isn't over, Sam. You think you can defy your own family? You think you can take what's rightfully ours? You'll regret this. I promise you that. The threat hung in the air like poison. I sat frozen, my grandfather's words still echoing in my head. He has integrity. He has character. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a test, a responsibility, a weight that would either crush me or forge me into something stronger. And my family was going to do everything in their power to destroy me for it. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. 3 words. Home, 7 p.m. now. It wasn't a request. It wasn't an invitation. It was a command, delivered with the same cold authority he'd used my entire life. Whenever he wanted me to fall in line, my first instinct was to ignore it, to block his number and disappear. But some stupid, naive part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, once they'd had time to process the shock, they'd calm down. Maybe they'd realize this was what Grandpa wanted. Maybe we could find a way forward as a family. I was so wrong. When I arrived at my childhood home that evening, the air felt wrong. Too still, too quiet, like the calm before a Category 5 hurricane. The house, a sprawling suburban mansion, my parents had bought with money they'd borrowed from my grandfather and never paid back, looked the same as always. Perfectly manicured lawn, designer landscaping, all surface, no substance. I walked through the front door and into the living room, which had been completely rearranged. The furniture was pushed back. The coffee table cleared. It looked less like a living room and more like an interrogation chamber. My father stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, jaw clenched. My mother perched on the edge of an armchair, her expression icy and calculating. Marcus sprawled across the sofa, laptop balanced on his knees, typing furiously but watching me out of the corner of his eye. Sit, my father ordered. I sat, not because I wanted to obey, but because my legs felt weak. My father wasted no time. Here's how this is going to work, Sam. You're going to sign over the estate to me. I'll manage it properly, the way it should have been managed from the start. In exchange, you'll receive a generous allowance. 10%. That's over $700 million. More money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. I blinked at him, trying to process. 10%. My mother leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. It's more than fair, Sam. You're young. You don't understand business, investments, corporate governance. You'd run the company into the ground within a year. This way, you're set for life, and the family empire stays intact where it belongs. Marcus snapped his laptop, shut and fixed me with a cold stare. 700 million is more than enough for you. The rest is needed for serious ventures. My tech platform is about to revolutionize the industry. Grandpa knew I was destined for greatness. Don't be selfish. The word hit me like a slap. Selfish me. The one who'd spent years visiting. Grandpa not for money but for connection. The one who'd never asked for a cent. They were calling me selfish for honoring his wishes. Grandpa chose me, I said quietly, my voice shaking but steady. He chose me because I didn't see him as a bank account. Because I cared about him as a person, not as a wallet. This isn't about what you think you're owed. It's about what he wanted. My father's face darkened to a dangerous shade of red. He stepped closer, towering over me. This isn't about what he wanted. This is about family loyalty. This is about doing what's right. You have 2 choices, Sam. Sign the transfer papers right now, or walk out that door with nothing. And I mean nothing. No family, no support. No second chances. The room seemed to shrink around me. My heart hammered against my ribs. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn my father's approval. All the times I'd swallowed my pride, accepted his criticism, bent myself into shapes that hurt just to fit into his idea of what I should be. I thought about my grandfather, sitting in his study, playing guitar, telling me stories about building his company from scratch through honesty, hard work, and treating people with dignity. I thought about the way he'd looked at me, not with disappointment, but with pride. I lifted my chin and met my father's eyes. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. No, I won't sign. The eruption was immediate and catastrophic. My mother shot to her feet, her voice rising to a shriek. You ungrateful, selfish little brat. After everything we've done for you, private schools, music lessons, a roof over your head, opportunities most people only dream of, and this is how you repay us? Marcus stood too, his face twisted in contempt. Enjoy being rich and alone. Sam, when you realize money can't buy you a family, don't come crawling back. But it was my father's next words that cut the deepest. He stepped so close I could see the fury blazing in his eyes, and his voice dropped to a lethal whisper. If you walk out of this house tonight without signing those papers, you are no longer my son. Don't come back. Don't call. Don't expect a single ounce of help or sympathy from any of us. As far as this family is concerned, you're dead. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Part of me wanted to cry, to beg him to take it back, to tell him I'd do anything to fix this. But another part of me, the part my grandfather had nurtured and believed in, held firm. I guess I've been dead to you for a long time, I said softly. You never saw me. You only saw what you wanted me to be, what you could use me for. Grandpa saw me, really saw me, and I'm not going to betray that. My father's face contorted with rage. He grabbed my arm, his grip bruising, and dragged me toward the front door. My mother followed, barking orders like a general commanding troops. Pack a bag, 30 minutes. After that, the locks get changed. And you're trespassing. Stumbled up the stairs to my old bedroom, hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. The room looked frozen in time. Posters of bands I'd loved in high school, trophies from guitar competitions, photos of me and Grandpa at various family gatherings, both of us smiling while everyone else looked bored or distracted. I grabbed a duffel bag and started throwing things in. Clothes, my passport, the watch Grandpa had given me for my 18th birthday, a framed photo of us from when I was 10, both of us holding guitars, grinning like idiots. My hands moved on autopilot while my mind screamed. When I came back downstairs, my family was waiting like executioners. My father stood at the open door, arms crossed, eyes cold as winter. My mother wouldn't even look at me. Marcus smirked from the couch, already back to scrolling through his phone as if I'd ceased to exist. Out, my father said. Just that one word. I stepped onto the porch, the night air biting cold against my skin. My bags felt impossibly heavy. I turned back one last time, some masochistic part of me hoping for a crack in the facade, some hint of regret or humanity. My mother's voice followed me out, sharp and bitter. You'll come crawling back, Sam. Money doesn't keep you warm at night. Family is forever, I met her eyes, and for the first time in my life, I didn't flinch. Then why did you just throw me away? The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through my bones. The porch light went off. The curtains were drawn. Just like that, I was erased. But I wasn't broken. In my pocket, I felt the cold metal of a key my grandfather had given me 6 months ago, pressing it into my palm with a wink and a cryptic smile. Just in case you ever need a place to think, kiddo. Mi casa es su casa always. The key to his estate. The key to the only place left in the world that felt like home. I drove through the darkness, my old sedan rattling and groaning with every mile. The key clutched so tightly in my hand it left an imprint on my palm. The Rodriguez estate sat on 50 acres outside the city, hidden behind iron gates and old-growth trees that had stood for over a century. I'd spent more weekends there than at my own house growing up. It was where Grandpa taught me to play chess, to cook his mother's recipes, to understand that real wealth had nothing to do with the numbers in your bank account. When the gates came into view, I almost broke down. They rose tall and imposing against the night sky, wrought iron twisted into intricate patterns, the family crest emblazoned in the center. For a moment, I couldn't move. Could I really do this? Could I step through these gates and claim a life I never asked for? But then I remembered the slam of my father's door, the coldness in my mother's eyes, the smirk on Marcus's face. I had nowhere else to go. This estate was all I had left of the man who truly loved me. I pulled up to the gate and slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, like it had been waiting for me. The gate swung open with a low creak, and I drove up the winding driveway, lined with oak trees whose branches formed a canopy overhead. When the mansion came into view, my breath caught in my throat. Every window was lit. Warm light spilled out onto the driveway like a welcome. For a moment it felt like Grandpa was still there, waiting for me with hot chocolate. And terrible dad jokes. I parked and climbed the stone steps to the front entrance. My hand shook as I unlocked the door and pushed it open. The smell hit me immediately. Lemon oil and cedar wood, the same scent I'd known since childhood. I stepped inside, and the grand foyer stretched before me, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers, but somehow it didn't feel cold or imposing. It felt like coming home. Mr. Sam. I nearly jumped out of my skin. A figure emerged from the shadows of the hallway. A tall man with silver hair and a kind face dressed in a crisp suit. Recognition flooded through me. Harrison? My voice cracked. Harrison Blake? He smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. Yes, sir. I've been with your grandfather for 30 years, head of household staff. And now, well, I suppose I'm with you. My throat tightened. I thought everyone would be gone. I thought the house would be empty. Harrison shook his head firmly. Your grandfather gave very specific instructions before he passed. He said, if anything happens to me, Harrison, you protect Sam. He's the true heir. Keep the house running. Keep it ready. He'll need sanctuary and he'll need allies. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back. Of course Grandpa had planned for this. He was always 3 steps ahead. Harrison led me deeper into the house. Through hallways I'd walked 1,000 times, until we reached the study. A fire was already crackling in the massive stone fireplace. The room smelled like leather and old books, exactly how I remembered it. Harrison gestured to one of the leather armchairs. Sit, Mr. Sam, we have much to discuss. I sank into the chair, the leather creaking softly, and felt some of the tension drain from my body. What happens now? I asked quietly. My family, they're not going to let this go. They'll come after me. Harrison's expression hardened. They've already tried, sir. 3 days after the funeral, your father, mother, and brother showed up here demanding access. They tried to take jewelry, documents, valuables. I turned them away, but they threatened legal action. Your grandfather anticipated all of this. He left detailed instructions, recordings, evidence, everything you'll need to defend yourself. He paused. But you'll need to be strong, Mr. Sam. This fight isn't over. It's only just beginning. I leaned back and stared at the fire, watching flames dance and twist. For the first time in weeks, I felt something shift inside me. Not quite hope, but something close. Determination. Maybe resolve. My grandfather had trusted me with his life's work. Not just the money, but the legacy, the values, the responsibility. If my family wanted to tear me down for it, fine. But I wasn't going to make it easy for them. This estate wasn't just a house. It was a fortress, and I was ready to defend it. That first night in the mansion, I slept in the guest room I'd always used as a kid. The bed was enormous, piled with quilts that smelled faintly of lavender. Despite everything, despite the chaos and betrayal and uncertainty, I slept deeply. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the tall windows, and I could hear voices downstairs. For a split second, I panicked. Had my family already found me? Had they come to force me out? I threw on clothes and rushed downstairs, only to find Harrison at the front door, speaking calmly to a man in an expensive suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Mr. Sam, Harrison said, noticing me on the stairs. This is Gregory Matthews. He has information your grandfather wanted you to have. Relief washed over me. Gregory stepped inside and offered a slight smile. Your grandfather trusted me with more than just his will. Sam, he trusted me with making sure you had everything you needed to survive what's coming. We moved into the dining room, where morning light poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. Gregory set his briefcase on the polished wood table and pulled out a thick manila envelope sealed with my grandfather's initials. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside were letters, handwritten in my grandfather's familiar scrawl, each one dated over the past year. Sam, the first letter began, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I know Richard and Elena will come for you with everything they have. Don't give in. Don't doubt yourself. I've spent the past year preparing for this moment. You won't stand alone. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. I've gathered people who care about you. People who will protect you when blood turns against you. Trust them as you've trusted me. You're stronger than you know, and you're more ready for this than you think. As if on cue, Harrison reappeared with someone else. A woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, carrying a worn leather journal. This is Margaret Reeves, Gregory said gently. Your grandfather's executive assistant for 25 years. She knows more about his affairs than anyone. Alive. Margaret's eyes welled up as she looked at me. Oh, Sam, you have your grandfather's eyes. He talked about you constantly. He was so proud. She set the journal on the table and opened it to pages, filled with neat, detailed notes. I kept records of everything, Sam. Every visit your father made demanding money. Every time your mother complained that your grandfather was stingy. Every time your brother pitched a business scheme that would have bankrupted anyone who invested in it. She flipped to another page. And every time you visited, every meal you shared, every guitar lesson, every conversation, your grandfather Had me document it all because he knew someday he'd need proof of who really cared. I stared at the pages, handwriting filling line after line. Richard arrived today angry, demanded $2 million for a sure-thing investment. When James refused, Richard called him selfish and left without saying goodbye. 3 hours later, Sam arrived with takeout from James's favorite deli. They spent the evening playing guitar and laughing. My chest tightened. Before I could fully process it, another knock sounded at the door. Harrison returned with a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and professional, carrying a sleek tablet. "This is Lydia Hernandez," Gregory introduced, Chief Financial Officer of Rodriguez Industries. "She's been running your grandfather's company for the past decade." Lydia gave me a firm handshake, her grip confident. "Sam, your grandfather left detailed instructions for me. He wanted you to understand not just the money, but the responsibility. Rodriguez Industries employs over 15,000 people. Their livelihoods depend on this company thriving. Your grandfather didn't just hand you a fortune. He handed you a mission." She pulled up charts and graphs on her tablet. "The company is stable, profitable, but it needs leadership that actually cares about more than quarterly earnings. Your grandfather built this on integrity, on treating employees like human beings, on giving back to communities. That's what he wanted you to protect." The weight of it settled over me, like a lead blanket. This wasn't just about surviving my family's attacks. It was about upholding a legacy that affected thousands of lives. By midday, more people arrived. Thomas Wu, the head of legal, who brought binders full of contracts and precedents. Dr. Sarah Bennett, my grandfather's personal physician, who testified to his sound mind and sharp decision-making right up until his death. Father Miguel Santos, the family's longtime priest, who'd counseled my grandfather and witnessed his anguish over my father's greed. Each person added another piece to the puzzle. Each one brought evidence, testimony, and most importantly, loyalty. Not to the money, not to the name, but to the man my grandfather had been and the grandson he'd chosen to carry forward his values. When the last person left, I sat alone in the study with Gregory and Harrison. The table was covered in documents, recordings, photographs, and testimonies. It was overwhelming. "Your grandfather spent an entire year building this safety net for you," Gregory said quietly. "He knew exactly what your family would do, and he made sure you'd have the tools to fight back." Harrison poured me a glass of water, his expression grave. "But they will fight, Mr. Sam. Your father won't accept this. He'll hire lawyers. He'll spin stories. He'll try to destroy your reputation. Are you prepared for that?" I stared at the evidence spread before me. All the proof of my grandfather's love, his trust, his belief in me. And I thought about the way my father had looked at me last night. Like I was nothing. Like I was an obstacle to be removed. Something hardened in my chest. Not anger exactly, but determination. Steel. "If they want a fight," I said slowly, "then I'll give them one. But I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for Grandpa, for everyone who depends on the company he built, for the values he stood for." Gregory smiled slightly. That's exactly what he hoped you'd say. 3 days later, the storm broke. I was in the study reviewing financial reports with Lydia when Harrison appeared in the doorway, his expression tense. "Mr. Sam, your family is here. All 3 of them. They're demanding entry." My pulse spiked, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Let them in." Gregory, who'd stayed at the estate to help me prepare, stood. "Remember everything we discussed. Stay calm. Don't engage with their emotions. Stick to facts." I nodded, my mouth dry. Harrison disappeared, and moments later, the sound of raised voices echoed through the halls. Then my family burst into the study like a hurricane. My father led the charge, his face red with rage. My mother followed, eyes blazing with fury and something that looked almost like betrayal. Marcus brought up the rear, slouching but vibrating with anger. "This ends now," my father roared, slamming his hands on the desk so hard papers scattered. "You've had your fun playing billionaire. But this estate belongs to the family, not to you alone." I stood slowly, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Grandpa left this to me, legally, morally, every way that matters." My mother's voice was sharp as broken glass. "You manipulated a dying old man. Everyone knows it. Sam, you poisoned his mind against his own family." Gregory stepped forward, holding up a folder. "Actually, Mrs. Rodriguez, James was not dying. He was in perfect health until the accident. And his decision was made over a year ago. documented by multiple medical professionals who confirmed his full mental capacity. Your accusations hold no legal or factual weight. My father's eyes narrowed dangerously. We'll see what a judge says when we contest this, Will. We'll drag this through court for years if we have to. A new voice spoke from the doorway, calm and authoritative. Actually, Richard, you won't. Everyone turned. A distinguished man in his 60s entered the room, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, his expression stern. Judge Harold Mitchell, a family friend for decades, someone I'd known my entire life. Judge Mitchell, my father said, his tone shifting to something more respectful but still edged with anger. I'm glad you're here. Maybe you can talk sense into Sam. Judge Mitchell's expression didn't soften. I'm here because James asked me to be Richard. He knew you'd try this. And he asked me to serve as an impartial witness if disputes arose. I've reviewed all the documentation. The will is airtight. Contesting it would be a waste of time and money you don't have. My father's face went pale, then red again. This is insane. I'm his son. The company should be mine. The company, Lydia interjected sharply, was never yours to claim. James built Rodriguez Industries from nothing. He owed you nothing. And frankly, based on your track record of failed ventures and reckless spending, you're the last person who should manage it. Marcus exploded, jumping to his feet. This is garbage. Grandpa promised to fund my tech platform. He said I had potential. Thomas Wu, the head of legal who'd slipped in quietly behind the judge, spoke up. Your grandfather funded 3 of your ventures, Marcus. All 3 failed within 18 months. Each one lost millions. He stopped investing in you because you never learned from your mistakes. You just kept demanding more. The room crackled with tension. My mother, desperate now, turned to me with tears in her eyes. Fake tears. I'd seen them before. Sam, please. We're family. Surely we can work something out. You can't just cut us off completely. I'm not cutting you off, I said quietly. You cut me off. You threw me out. You told me I was dead to you. I'm just honoring Grandpa's wishes. My father's voice dropped to something cold and venomous. If you think you can manage a billion-dollar empire, you're delusional. You're a guitar teacher, Sam, a nobody. You'll run this company into the ground within a year, and when you do, don't come crying to us. I met his eyes without flinching. I'm not managing this alone. I have people who actually knew Grandpa, who understand his vision. People who care about more than just the bottom line. Harrison stepped forward, his voice firm. And I need to inform you, Mr. Rodriguez, that we have security footage from the days after the funeral. Footage of the 3 of you attempting to remove items from this estate without permission. Jewelry, documents, art. That constitutes theft, my mother gasped. Marcus cursed under his breath. My father's face went from red to white in seconds. That's a misunderstanding. We were just securing family heirlooms. Securing? Thomas repeated, pulling out his phone and displaying a video. This footage shows you filling bags with valuables and attempting to leave without informing staff. That's not securing. That's stealing. Judge Mitchell's expression was granite. Richard, Elena, Marcus, I suggest you leave now before this escalates further. Sam is the legal owner of this estate. You have no claim, no right to be here. And if you continue to harass him, you'll face legal consequences. For a long moment, nobody moved. The air felt electric, charged with rage and desperation. Then my father spoke, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow more terrifying than any of his shouting. You've made your choice, Sam. Remember that. You chose money over family. I felt something break inside me, but it wasn't weakness. It was liberation. No, I said clearly. I chose integrity over greed. There's a difference. My father turned without another word and stormed out. My mother followed, shooting me one last look of pure venom. Marcus paused at the door, his expression a mix of disbelief and grudging respect. You're going to regret this, he muttered. But I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The sound of their car engines roaring to life and tires spitting. Gravel echoed through the estate. Then silence. Beautiful, profound silence. I sank into my chair, my legs suddenly weak. Gregory placed a hand on my shoulder. You did well, Sam. Standing up to them took courage. Judge Mitchell nodded. Your grandfather would be proud. You didn't cave. You didn't compromise your principles, but I barely heard them. My mind was reeling, trying to process what had just happened. My family, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, had just declared war, and I'd stood my ground. Over the next few weeks, life took on a surreal new rhythm. I woke up every day in my grandfather's mansion, surrounded by people who were slowly becoming my chosen family. Harrison taught me about managing the estate, everything from dealing with staff to maintaining the grounds. Margaret walked me through my grandfather's business philosophies, his notes and strategies for running a company with ethics and compassion. Lydia brought me into meetings with department heads, introducing me to the people whose lives depended on Rodriguez Industries thriving. I met engineers, warehouse workers, marketing teams, all of them ordinary people working hard to support their families. It hit me then, fully and deeply, that this wasn't about me or my family drama. It was about them. I started attending company events, shaking hands, learning names, listening to concerns. At first, people were skeptical. Who was this kid who'd inherited everything? What did he know about running a company? But I didn't pretend to have all the answers. I was honest. I'm learning, I told them. My grandfather trusted me with this, and I'm going to honor that trust by listening to you, by making sure this company stays true to his values. Slowly, carefully, I earned their respect. My phone never stopped buzzing with calls and texts from my parents and Marcus. Some were threats. You're going to lose everything. Some were manipulations. We can still fix this if you just listen. Some were outright lies. Grandpa would have wanted us to share. I stopped answering. I blocked their numbers. Whatever relationship we'd had, if it had ever existed at all, was dead now. 3 months after inheriting the estate, I stood on a stage at the opening of the James Rodriguez Foundation for Education and Opportunity. We'd allocated $2 billion to scholarships, vocational training, and community development programs. The auditorium was packed with students, teachers, parents, people whose lives would be changed by this. When I stepped up to the microphone, my hands were shaking. My grandfather taught me that wealth is a tool, not an identity, I said, my voice echoing through the space. He believed in giving people opportunities to build their own success. This foundation honors that belief. It's not charity. It's investment in human potential. The applause was deafening. And for the first time since inheriting the fortune, I felt like I was doing something right. Life at the mansion transformed. Sunday dinners became a tradition, but not with blood relatives. With chosen family. Harrison, Margaret, Lydia, Gregory, Thomas, even some of the company employees who'd become friends. We'd gather around the long dining table, the one my grandparents had hosted countless formal dinners at, and we'd eat and laugh and tell stories. Margaret taught me her grandmother's recipe for empanadas. Harrison, to everyone's shock, could tell the filthiest jokes with a perfectly straight face. Lydia brought her kids sometimes, and I taught them basic guitar chords. It was messy and loud and imperfect, and it was everything I'd never had growing up. It was real. One Saturday morning, 6 months after my grandfather's death, I drove to the cemetery alone. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under my feet as I walked to his grave. The headstone was simple, elegant. James Rodriguez, 9/38/23. He lived with integrity. I knelt in the grass, the cold seeping through my jeans, and for a long time I just sat there. "Hey, Grandpa," I finally whispered, my voice breaking. "I hope you're proud of me. I'm trying. God, I'm trying so hard." The wind rustled through the trees, and I took a shaky breath. The foundation is helping hundreds of kids now. Some of them are the first in their families to go to college. The company is doing well, better than expected. Your employees, they're amazing. They care so much. And I think I'm starting to understand what you wanted me to learn. Tears slipped down my cheeks, but I smiled through them. It was never about the money, was it? It was about using it to build something meaningful, about protecting people who can't protect themselves, about living with integrity even when it's hard. I pulled out my guitar, which I'd brought from the car, and started playing one of the songs he'd taught me, an old folk song about journeys and coming home. My voice cracked on some of the notes, but I kept going. When the last chord faded, I whispered, "I promise I'll keep making you proud. I won't waste what you gave me. I won't let them corrupt it." The wind picked up again, warm despite the season, and for just a moment, it felt like an answer. That night, I sat at the grand piano in the mansion's music room, the same piano my grandfather had played. My fingers moved across the keys, improvising a melody that felt like grief and hope tangled together. I thought about everything that had happened. How I'd gone from a broke guitar teacher to the steward of $1 billion legacy in a matter of weeks. How I'd lost my family but gained something deeper. How I'd learned that real wealth has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with character, purpose, and the people you choose to stand beside. The inheritance wasn't the 7 billion sitting in accounts and investments. It was the lesson my grandfather had been teaching me my whole life. That integrity can't be bought. That legacy isn't measured in dollars. That the truest form of wealth is living in a way that makes the world better for the people who come after you. My family wanted the money. They wanted the status. They wanted the power, but they never understood what my grandfather was really offering. A chance to be part of something bigger than yourself. A responsibility to use privilege for good. A legacy built not on greed, but on dignity. And as I played the final notes, the sound echoing through the empty halls of the mansion that was now my home, I made a silent promise. Not just to my grandfather, but to myself. I would carry this legacy forward. I would protect what he built. I would live with the integrity he taught me. And no matter how hard my family tried to tear me down, I would never ever betray the trust he'd placed in me. Because that's what real family does. They honor each other. They protect each other. They lift each other up. And if your blood relatives can't do that, then you find people who will. That night, alone in the mansion that no longer felt empty, I finally understood. I wasn't just Sam Rodriguez, the guitar teacher who got lucky. I was Sam Rodriguez, the keeper of a legacy. And I was going to make damn sure it counted for something.